with another 2-hour Talkback Live. America Speaks Out. We'll see you then. Please join us.
A new view of Ground Zero and a new, though gentle reminder about what lies ahead.
The hope is still there that we might be able to save some lives. But the reality is that in the last several days we haven't found anyone.
And what will it take to find Osama bin Laden and others accused of terrorism today? The president prepares the public.
This war on terrorism is going to take a while, and the American people must be patient.
Good evening from Washington. I'm Wolf Blitzer along with Joey Chen in Atlanta.
Good evening, Wolf. We want to bring our viewers up to date right away on the latest developments in America's new war on terrorism. President Bush is back at the White House this hour after intensive planning sessions which are held at Camp David. Mr. Bush said the country will launch a crusade to defeat what he called a new kind of evil. He asked the country for patience as his advisor put the country on notice that the war on terrorism is likely to last for years. Vice President Cheney, meantime, confirms that after the Trade Center attacks and the attack on the Pentagon, President Bush approved the downing of the fourth hijacked passenger plane. Cheney said it was the hardest decision Mr. Bush had to make on that day. As we all know, the fourth plane crashed before it reached Washington. President Bush repeated today that Osama bin Laden is the government's prime suspect in connection with Tuesday's attacks. But in a statement released today, bin Laden denied any connection to the suicide assaults and said the perpetrators seem to have had, in his words, personal reasons. The FBI, meantime, is searching an apartment in Delray Beach, Florida, that is underway at this hour, and agents there are removing boxes full of materials. Two of the hijackers are believed to have lived in that apartment. A similar operation has taken place today in New Jersey. And in churches across this nation today, Americans lifted their voices in songs of faith and love of country. Polls are indicating strong support for the nation's leadership in the earliest days of this war against terrorism. A couple of other developments to note today. The Bush administration and Congress are now examining ways to relax restrictions against the CIA. One such restriction is the ban on political assassinations. And Attorney General John Ashcroft says he will ask Congress for expanded law enforcement powers, including broader authority in using wiretaps. The administration says intelligence and law enforcement will represent major components in the war against terrorism. Now on something that we want to show you. We know it is very difficult for our viewers to see this again, but it is to help our understanding of what took place on Tuesday. These are very late images that we're just getting in. As you see, they're shot by an amateur video cameraman taking pictures, as you can see, of one of the towers on fire after the plane went through it, but before, obviously, the final collapse of both of the towers. As you see, this latest video gives you probably the clearest image that we have seen yet of the hole gashed into the side of the World Trade Center towers, and, of course, the burning as well. Another picture that we're just getting in as well from amateur videographer coming in. This shows an engine of one of the jets, obviously, lying on the streets there in the Wall Street area. Very grim pictures, but to help really in our understanding of what took place on Tuesday. Wolf?
Joey, coming up this hour, we'll have reports on the support for war among the American public. Senior political analyst Bill Schneider will take us inside the latest poll numbers. We'll also have exclusive reports from Afghanistan. Our Nick Robertson on the mood in the Afghan capital. And Steve Harrigan in the 5% of Afghanistan not controlled by the Taliban. And we'll take you inside one of New York City's hospitals where the worst of the burn victims are being treated. President Bush pledged today the United States will rid the world of evildoers, in his words, following Tuesday's terror attack. The President and Mrs. Bush returned to the White House several hours ago from Camp David. Speaking to reporters, Mr. Bush reiterated that the battle against terrorism will not be easy or quick. And earlier in the day, top Bush administration officials went on the air, appearing on the Sunday talk shows to underscore the president's message. CNN White House correspondent Kelly Wallace has more.
After huddling with his national security team at Camp David, President Bush returns to the White House and urges Americans to try to get on with their lives.
Just like the farmers and ranchers and business owners and factory workers have a job to do, my administration has a job to do, and we're going to do it.
Back to business, but not business as usual, as Mr. Bush and his aides mount a full-court offensive to reassure a jittery public.
We're pursuing over 40,000 leads.
They can't destroy America.
Things have changed since last Tuesday. The world's shifted in some respects.
The administration facing a delicate balancing act, encouraging an anxious country to go back to work, while making the case its campaign against terrorists and those who harbor them will not be an overnight solution.
It will take time. It's not a matter of days or weeks. It's years. It's going to take the support of the American people, and I have every confidence it'll be there.
The support is there now. In a CNN USA Today Gallup poll, 86% said they support a military action even if it lasts several months. Support drops, though, to 66% if a conflict lasts several years. For a public angry about how these tragedies could have happened, Attorney General John Ashcroft says he will send proposals to Capitol Hill in days to strengthen laws to track terrorists.
We will develop the tools.
While Secretary of State Colin Powell calls for a return to normalcy.
If we stick in our bunkers and walk around afraid, they will have won. Well, we're not a fearful people. We know how to overcome tragedy, and we will restore a sense of normalcy to this society, to this country very quickly in a way that will impress the world.
To underscore that point, tomorrow Treasury Secretary Paul O'Neill rings the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange, and Major League players return to the ball fields, while the administration continues planning its response to the worst act of terrorism on U.S. soil. Kelly Wallace, CNN, near Camp David, Maryland.
And as Kelly just reported, an overwhelming number of Americans believe the U.S. military should retaliate for Tuesday's terror attacks. According to the CNN USA Today Gallup poll, 88% of those surveyed support such retaliation. Only 8% were opposed. Most Americans also believe the U.S. should mount a long-term war to eliminate terrorism worldwide. 86% of those polled said they would support a U.S. military action if it lasts for several months. And 66% said they would support such an action if it lasted even several years. CNN senior political analyst Bill Schneider joins us now with more on some perspective. It doesn't appear, Bill, that there's much indication, at least now, of a division in the American public.
Well, we are seeing a little indication of division, and I can tell you I just saw evidence of it driving across the mall behind us in front of the Capitol, where people were at a rally behind a sign, a large sign that said, "Justice, not revenge," as if this should be treated as a crime, not as an act of war. There is a division over a basic issue, which is what should our objective be in this war. We found a majority this weekend, but only a bare majority, 52%, endorsing the view that the U.S. should mount a long-term war to eliminate terrorist groups worldwide. A substantial minority, 36%, believe our war aim should be more limited, to find and punish the specific terrorist groups responsible for this attack, and another 6% don't want the U.S. to take any military action at all. That's over 40% who do not endorse the larger war aim that this administration is pressing for. We see a big division here between men and women. Women do not support the larger war aim, men do. And this is the only place where there's a division between parties. Republicans favor the all-out war against terrorism. Democrats are divided. So this is a potential source of division over a basic issue. What should the war objective be?
And you've been studying poll numbers for many years. How do these numbers, the mood right now, compare to previous U.S. military engagements?
Well, there's a basic difference. In this, we were attacked. That's not true of Korea, Vietnam, the Cold War, the Gulf War. We were attacked, so the president and the administration don't have to really rally the public the way, say, his father did in the Gulf War. The public has already rallied. Now, in the past, we found that support for wars varies with several things. One, the losses. As the losses mount, support goes down. Second, the time it takes. As the war goes on, inconclusively, support goes down. I think there's going to be a lot more patience and a lot more tolerance of losses because we were attacked. But there's a third condition that applies, and that's politics. Americans believe that wars should not be fought for limited purposes. They should be fought to win. They have very little patience and have shown very little in the past for getting involved in other countries' politics. But how do we avoid politics in this case when the U.S. objective is not to defeat another country like Japan, but to persuade their governments to cooperate with us? If they don't, we'll get them out of power, and then we become responsible for whatever government takes over in their country, which means politics may be unavoidable, and that could be a problem down the road.
When you saw these latest CNN USA Today Gallup poll numbers come in, was there any huge surprise as far as you were concerned, or are these numbers predictable?
Well, they were predictable because of what happened. Certainly, even Democrats are rallying to support the president. The president right now has an 86% job rating. That's no surprise. It's almost as high as his father's was in the Gulf War. No, I wouldn't say I was surprised by the unity, but I also was surprised. I was a bit surprised to see that on the issue of the basic objective, what are we trying to accomplish here? To punish the perpetrators or to win an all-out war against terrorism? There really is a division. It's what the sign said on the mall. Are we looking for justice, or are we looking for revenge?
Bill Schneider, our senior political analyst, thank you very much. Joey?
Well, for his part, with all the talk about Osama bin Laden himself is denying any involvement in the U.S. terror attacks. Now, take a look at this. These are statements from Osama bin Laden released today from the Gulf state of Qatar. A quote here: "After the recent attacks, which the U.S. has witnessed, the U.S. government ventured to point fingers at me, accuse me of involvement. The U.S. government has consistently blamed me for being behind every occasion its enemies attack it. I would like to assure the world that I did not plan the recent attacks, which seem to have been planned by people for personal reasons. As for me, I have been living in the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan and following its leader's rules. The current leader does not allow me to exercise such operations." Osama bin Laden, Afghanistan, just two of the world players in whatever move the United States will make next. To help us understand what is important to what lies ahead, we're joined this hour by former Secretary of the Navy James Webb, who has inside perspective of the decisions facing the nation's military, as well with us Robin Wright of the Los Angeles Times, international correspondent with a very in-depth knowledge of this region. First, Mr. Secretary, I'd like to begin with you to talk to you a little bit about the relationship between diplomacy and military decisions here. Can you tell us why these things have to go hand in hand?
Well, I mean, listening to the poll numbers and the discussion about that just preceded your question, you can see that people are talking about two different things when really they're interrelated. We need to develop policies that will address accountability for the actions that have occurred, but also to carry them forward into a situation where you can preempt and prevent these kinds of actions in the future. And in order to do that, you're going to have to take it to the places where these people have trained and where they have logistical support. The Islamic fundamentalist terrorist movement over the past 20 years or so has done a very good job of sort of writing what you would call a seam in international law and policy. They have been afforded certain protections by different countries at the same time, while they have never been specifically sponsored by different countries. And that's a distinction that's going to have to go away. But in order to solve this problem, we're going to have to go in a long-term, on a long-term basis from accountability for these acts to precluding them into the future to developing a diplomatic format where we can address the problems that have fed many of the anxieties. So they all interrelate. They
do all interrelate, and we want to talk a little bit more about that, but I want you to help our viewers understand. This is a map of Afghanistan. Help us understand the topography, the geographical considerations in making a strike against Osama bin Laden, if that is ultimately what is decided by the administration. It is tremendously rough country.
I think the best thing to say about those sorts of military options is that Secretary Rumsfeld is an extremely capable individual. He's got a great team with him. We got a president leading us here, and it would be wrong to second-guess them at this point. It may be Afghanistan. It may not be Afghanistan. The first thing that we really need to do is to develop domestic policies